What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Ali, and today we're going to give you guys a coaching search update. The New York Giants have two defensive coordinators in the running for their vacant position, and they also just had a recent interview for their running backs coach. The running backs coach left to go be the offensive coordinator or something for Syracuse, so now they've got another opening on Brian Daboll's coaching staff that they have to fill. But they did interview a pretty promising assistant coach candidate for that job and a couple of really intriguing defensive coordinators for that vacant position as well. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the guys that the Giants are taking a look at and kind of discuss what they could bring to the Giants. But before we do so, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Ali, how are you doing today, my friend? And let's dive into that running backs coach first and foremost. I know you wrote an article about him this morning. I know you have a lot of good info about him. What does this guy, Joel Thomas, potentially bring into the New York Giants?
Well, thank you for asking. I am doing great. I'm actually kind of excited about this running back coach interview. I know he isn't essentially like an offensive coordinator or anything, but he did coach Alvin Kamara throughout his whole entire career, which is when to watch. Alvin Kamara made the Pro Bowl 5 times, and he is very much attributed to that. And I think paired with a potential Saquon Barkley, I feel like I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. We don't know if Saquon Barkley is coming back, but if he does get his hands on Saquon Barkley, I think we could see a lot come out of him. So I just want to know, what do you think he could do with Saquon Barkley if Saquon Barkley does come back, based on his success with Alvin Kamara?
Yeah, so we'll see about Saquon. Of course, we know that the Giants are going to have to negotiate with him once again. He's an unrestricted free agent, the same way that he was last offseason, signed to that one-year deal worth about $10 million, basically played on the franchise tag. Doesn't sound like he's interested in playing on the franchise tag or any sort of one-year deal again this upcoming season. I think that if the Giants want Saquon Barkley back, it's got to be on a long-term deal. He's definitely proven to be valuable to this team, and I think the Giants are going to try and get a deal done, but if they don't, Saquon Barkley said he doesn't want to play on the franchise tag. He would be offended by getting tagged again, so he might become interested in testing the free agency market. But again, if the Giants do bring back Saquon Barkley, or for whoever running back is playing running back for them next season, Joel Thomas as a potential hiring would mean, in my opinion, more receptions for the running back. One thing that we know about the New Orleans Saints offense is over the past decade, really almost a decade, they've had their running backs heavily involved in the receiving game. They're all very polished route runners down in New Orleans, and they all have really good receiving abilities coming out of the backfield and even splitting out wide, which is something that we've seen Saquon Barkley do sometimes throughout his career, but in my opinion, not often enough. If you guys remember, I think it was 2018, his rookie season, maybe it was 19. Against the Houston Texans, there was a crucial third down. They split Saquon Barkley out wide. He ran a go route, burned the guy off the line of scrimmage, and caught a first down reception to win the game, essentially. Years ago, that's what they would do with Saquon Barkley. The past few years, they haven't done that with him at all. His opportunities in the receiving game have diminished season by season. So I think that if Joel Thomas were to be hired for this position, there would be some sort of an emphasis on utilizing Saquon Barkley more in the receiving game, more screens, more angle routes, option routes out of the backfield, and stuff like that. And even if Saquon Barkley isn't back, whoever is playing running back for the New York Giants next season, I think is going to be more of a focal point in the receiving game. Now, Brian Daboll's offense, Mike Kafka's play calling really haven't catered towards that side of Saquon Barkley's game, haven't asked Saquon to do a whole lot in the receiving game. But I do think with Joel Thomas in there, if he were to be hired by the Giants, kind of the knowledge that he would share and the way that he likes his running backs to play, he'd probably share with the offensive staff that I like to get my running backs open and space through the receiving game. And that's how he's probably going to recommend the Giants offensive coordinator and head coach run that thing. So, yeah, I know you
I
have a
can
lot to
agree.
say about that. Yep.
I can agree just because the Saints, their running game, like they struggled this year. That isn't a secret. I think that's a big reason why they even allowed him to take the interview for this position. They haven't been successful at running the ball at all. So Kamara has actually found more success being used as a pass catcher, wasn't successful as a runner, was successful as a catcher. So I think that will be big, especially for our offense. Our offensive line struggles a lot, much like the Saints did this year. We don't know if there's going to be a jump next year. Hopefully, it does get better. But in the sense that our offensive line struggles, our running back can't run, we at least know he'll be able to help them utilize our running back more as a pass catcher. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah,
But I will like to say that the Saints did lead the league in rushing touchdowns with him as their running back coach as well, which is nice to see. So just gonna throw that out there as well.
Yeah, the Saints have always had productive backfield. Again, Alvin Kamara has been one of the best running backs in the NFL for years. He obviously missed the beginning of the season. I think he was suspended. But Kamara's
Mm-hmm.
always been really productive and a great player. But again, what's made him so special is his ability to play out of the backfield as a receiver. And Joel Thomas has gotten a lot of credit for that aspect of Kamara's game and developing him as a receiver. So if he were to be hired by the New York Giants, that's something that I would keep an eye on. I think that the Giants backfield would be more involved in the receiving game. And I think that's something that would be really exciting, something that's been missing from the Giants offense over the past
Mm-hmm.
few seasons, in my opinion. I think Saquon Barkley, he doesn't have the best hands. He's not the best route runner, but he's definitely more than capable. If you look back at his rookie season, I remember there was a game versus Dallas. He had 12 targets and 9 receptions or something. And he ended that season with 91 total receptions, which tied Odell Beckham Jr. for the most receptions as a rookie in Giants franchise history. So Saquon Barkley has the ability to get involved in the receiving game, but over the past few years, they haven't involved him in the receiving game. I think that with Thomas, if he were to be hired here for the Giants, we would see that change quite significantly. But let's go ahead and flip over to the defensive side of the ball. The Giants do have a couple of defensive coordinator targets. First one being Denard Wilson. He's currently with the Baltimore Ravens as their secondary coach. But he was formerly with the Philadelphia Eagles as their passing game coordinator. And the Eagles had a really good pass defense with Denard Wilson at the helm. So he's never been a full-time defensive coordinator, but being a passing game defensive coordinator means he was kind of a co-defensive coordinator when he was over with Philadelphia. So he could definitely handle his own in that right, I think. And he has really good track record of secondaries. All of his past defenses that he's coached have been really solid in the past. So Denard Wilson, a younger, more inexperienced option here for the Giants, but kind of exciting as a potential fit here to help bolster the Giants' pass coverage. But Allie, what are you thinking about Denard Wilson, kind of his history with the Eagles and now the Ravens? I know one point that you made to me before we started recording, this could be a way for the Giants to easily transition their players into a kind of
Yeah.
familiar defensive scheme.
Yeah, definitely. One of the main things before the whole Wink Dable debacle that I was seeing, especially coming from Dexter Lawrence, he spoke really high of Wink and he said it would be devastating for that defense to have to learn a whole new system and basically transition into something completely new because stuff like that can really hurt a defense if they aren't prepared for it. And I feel like the easy transition from a similar system could help kind of ease a little bit of that burden. I do think it's a bit of a risk going with him just because he is inexperienced. It wasn't a full-time defensive coordinator, and this is third year of Brian Dable being a coach, third year of Joe Shane being GM, and I feel like they really have to make this hiring right, especially following how the Wink stuff ended. So that's honestly the only thing that scares me is that if they do hire him, then it needs to be, again, the right hire. You can't mess up with this. However, the Eagles were really good in that aspect last year, as you mentioned, when he was with them. The Eagles feeling that their defense is not the same as it was when he left. So seeing that transition could also show you that he can bring something exciting to our secondary, and I am really excited about that. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, if you look back on that Eagles defense in 2021 and 2022, in 2021, Wilson was the defensive backs coach. In 2022, he was still the defensive backs coach, but also the passing game coordinator. And we know they had a shutdown secondary last year, took them all the way to the Super Bowl, didn't win, thank God. But Denard Wilson's defense was really solid. And then he moved over to the Baltimore Ravens this past season as their defensive backs coach. And they've had arguably the best defense in the NFL, probably the best pass defense in the NFL. So you're seeing a correlation there. And meanwhile, after leaving Philadelphia, their pass defense has fallen off a cliff. So you're seeing Denard Wilson everywhere he goes and coordinates the passing game, or the pass defense game, rather. Very good secondaries, really solid performances out of those defenses. And everywhere he doesn't go, everywhere that he leaves, you see a bit of a fall off. So Denard Wilson, yes, this would be a step up for him. He's inexperienced in this regard, but I do think that if he stepped into this Giants defense as the coordinator, he would be able to really bolster that secondary and get the most out of guys like Deontay Banks.
Yeah, I just want to throw in something else here. I just want to talk about the improvement of Kyle Hamilton, maybe. That safety position. He had a second year jump. Like, that was insane. Kyle Hamilton, one of the best safeties in the NFL right now. That might be able to take, maybe not, but I personally love Kyle Hamilton. And if we re-sign McKinney, I think we could see a lot coming from McKinney as well if he does take over. So that's just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, the development of those secondary pieces for both Philadelphia and Baltimore over the past couple seasons, that's been really exciting to watch. And I think that when you look at this Giants defense, there's a lot of young pieces in there that are expected to
Yes.
take a leap, kind of need to take a leap. Like we need Deontay Banks to take a step forward in 2024. I think that he will. You all know how high I am on Deontay Banks, how high I was before the Giants even drafted him. But then you've got other guys. Jason Pinnock was good this year, still a lot of room for improvement. Xavier McKinney looked like a stud down the final stretch of the season. If they do
Yes.
extend him, which I believe they should, I think that he could also really thrive in this defensive scheme from Denard Wilson. But to talk more about that scheme, I will say this would be probably a 3-4 defense. Everywhere that Denard Wilson's been has primarily ran that 3-4. So you will still see Kayvon Thibodeau as a stand-up pass rusher playing that outside linebacker position, which I know a lot of Giants fans are kind of critical of. They don't want to see Kayvon Thibodeau in a 2-point stance anymore. They want to see him in a 3-point stance with his hand in the dirt. So we'll talk about the other candidate that the Giants have for defensive coordinator who runs more of a 4-3. Kayvon Thibodeau will be more of a defensive end in his system. But before we get to that, I do want to finish on Denard Wilson and say I think that there is an element to him being from the Baltimore Ravens, kind of having some similarities in that defense to what Wink Martindale had this past season. Of course, we know Martindale was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens many years ago. His playbook was largely kept over in Baltimore upon his departure. They run pretty much the same system and same scheme. It's very similar at the very least. And so, considering that Denard Wilson was helping run a defense that was basically a stripped down Wink Martindale playbook, I think that coming over here, he could implement a playbook that the players are still pretty familiar with. They could get up to speed rather quickly. And so it wouldn't be as difficult of a transition for a lot of these defensive players who really grew comfortable in the Wink Martindale defense. So I think that's a major selling point for Denard Wilson. I know continuity is key in the coaching and player development department. This would be an element of continuity. It wouldn't be exact continuity. I've advocated for Andre Patterson or Jerome Henderson. Those are guys on the Giants coaching staff currently. If they were to get this job, that's continuity. They would be stepping through into higher positions with the same players. That's exact continuity, but stripped down continuity, kind of halfway continuity, would be Denard Wilson. He does run some similar scheme to what the Giants were running the past 2 seasons. So I think that would be a way to keep these players kind of comfortable in the defensive scheme without too many hiccups. But now let's talk about Shane Bowen, however it's said. I've been butchering names all week on this podcast. He's the defensive coordinator currently for the Tennessee Titans. But of course, with Mike Vrabel being fired, that coaching staff is up for grabs. So they've gone ahead. The Giants have requested an interview with Shane Bowen, and they will be interviewing him, I believe, sometime this week. This is more of a 4-3 hybrid defensive front, 3-4, 4-3, kind of both. A couple of years ago, it was primarily 3-4. This year, the base was a 4-3. So you're talking about 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and you are talking about guys like Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau having their hand in the dirt more often than not in a Titans-led defensive system. But Ali, I know that you're kind of less excited about the potential Shane Bowen hiring. He's 37 years old. He's been a defensive coordinator for, I think, 2 or 3 seasons now. So he doesn't have a well of experience. It's not like Wink Martindale, where he's just been coaching forever and he's kind of one of those veteran, highly respected coaches, but a good young up and comer. The Titans defense, you could give a lot of credit to Mike Vrabel for how good it's been over the past few years. But Shane Bowen has also been involved in that. He has been the defensive coordinator, and the unit has been really solid for years. So I think that this could be a good hiring, though I'm not fully convinced. I really like Denard Wilson, but I'm curious to hear your take on Shane Bowen and kind of why you might be hesitant to hiring him.
Well, one of the main reasons why I'm hesitant is just Titans fans' reaction to us even interviewing him gave me all I needed to know. They were happy. They were saying, yes, please take him. We don't want him. Like, stuff like that makes me nervous because if you have a really good coordinator, why would you want to lose them? Like, obviously not a coordinator, but speaking, let's say, assistant GM, Brandon Brown's getting interviewed, I'm not commenting, yes, please take him, take him. It's more of like, no, like I want him to stay. So that's been my only kind of red flag. Why are you so excited to get rid of him? However, you do make a good point with Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau, which is something I also will be excited to see just because I'm tired of the whole Kayvon is a bust narrative. Kayvon is inconsistent. Well, he has been, but I don't feel like that's mainly his fault. And I would just like to see Kayvon kind of take that big step that he needs to so he could kind of get rid of the whole bust allegations, get rid of, oh, he's not a good pass rusher, oh, he's not this, just completely get rid of that. And so that would be the only reason that I will be excited for that. I know also under Bowen that he has a really good run defense, which is where we have struggled over the past couple of years. I feel like for a while we've struggled against the run. So it'll be nice to no longer have to worry about running backs running through us. So that's kind of like the pros and cons of both. So pros, I feel like we could see a lot out of Kayvon, a lot out of Azeez, more out of the run game because that's sucked for us. But red flag, Titans fans are really excited to get rid of him, and that kind of makes me nervous.
Yeah, I'll say one selling point for Shane Bowen, though, he does have experience calling defensive plays, running the defense, and being a coordinator. Where with Denard Wilson, we're talking about a guy who's been a passing game coordinator, but never a defensive coordinator. Bowen's been a defensive coordinator for 3 seasons, so he has far more experience. And I know I was reading about the Giants and their potential search for a defensive coordinator. It was mentioned that they are looking for a guy with experience. They don't want to take too much of a chance on somebody. So that might lead them to lean more towards Bowen because that experience is kind of crucial in the search process for the Giants. And I will say he's also a former outside linebackers coach. So when you're talking about the development of Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari, if Bowen were to be hired and decide to run with that 3-4 front, keep those guys playing outside linebacker, he has that ability to really coach and develop those two crucial players in this Giants defense, which again, I think is really important. Those guys developing, Kayvon Thibodeau taking that step forward is probably the most important thing that the Giants need this upcoming season. Listen to the 12 sacks or 11 and a half that he had this past year. That's a great first step, but we all know that there's numbers out there floating around that show on a down-to-down basis, Kayvon Thibodeau wasn't the most productive pass rusher that he could have been. So having a guy like Shane Bowen, whose history is coaching outside linebackers, that might be really beneficial to Kayvon Thibodeau and allow him to break out. But again, I like his experience. I think that's a main selling point for the Giants with Shane Bowen. He's ran a really good defense. The run defense has been really good for the Titans for years and years. So he could probably get the most out of the front seven. But again, if you want the secondary to take that step forward, you're probably going to lead Denard Wilson. So, Allie, I'll ask you, which way do you lean? Which one of those two aspects do you think is more important for this team? Do you think that they should target a defensive coordinator that can really bolster the front seven? Or do you think it's the back five, those defensive backs that really need to be emphasized and prioritized in this defensive coordinator search?
That's a hard question, because likely you would want a both to take those steps. But honestly, for where this team is right now, I would say maybe that front seven. Also, just me loving Kayvon Thibodeau, that's something that I would really love to see more. So, front seven for me, not saying I wouldn't want to see it for the guys in the back too, but that's the area we need to address. I know this year we got absolutely killed by running backs, and I feel like teams are just gonna keep doing that every year. Like, oh, don't worry about throwing the ball, just run it. They're not gonna be able to stop us. Just keep running the ball. So it'll be nice that teams will kind of have to be forced to kind of open up their playbook more when they go against us. Like, okay, now we're gonna have to try and challenge our secondary more because we can't run the ball. So
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind with Shane Bowen, because Mike Vrabel was fired from the Tennessee Titans, he might interview with the Giants, but might wait to make a decision. There's a chance that he waits for Mike Vrabel, sees where he gets hired, and then follows him over there. That's definitely possible because Vrabel was fired by the Titans, but is still considered to be a top tier head coaching candidate around the league. So, for example, if he were to land somewhere else in the league, Shane Bowen might just follow him there and be his defensive coordinator once again. I don't know too much about their relationship and how well they work together and, how closely they want to continue to work together, but there is a chance that Shane Bowen looks at Mike Vrabel as the guy that he wants to play or coach under, and so just follows him wherever he goes. But I do think the Giants are doing the right thing. This is definitely one of the top defensive coordinator candidates out there. So they're doing the right thing by interviewing him, but we'll see which decision they make. I'm sure they're going to add other guys to their short list, although they did interview a very short list of candidates for their offensive line coach job. So I'm not sure how long their list is going to be for defensive coordinator, but I imagine it's going to be longer. It's a much more important hiring. This is the guy who's going to run the defense, take a lot of pressure off of head coach Brian Dable's shoulders. So this is a hiring that they do need to get right. So curious to know what everybody else thinks. Denard Wilson, Shane Bowen, or anybody else that you want to see the Giants interview down below in the comment section. Let us know. And make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And again, comment your thoughts on all the topics down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.